would turn out. I mean, it was a great experience and all that, but you never know what it's going to make on people.
This is a different kind of movie. This is not mythic. This is actual.
There are movies you enjoy, and then there are movies that permanently rewire how you see cinema. Goodfellas is the second kind. Since 1990, Scorsese's brutal, brilliant masterpiece has lived in a category all its own. And yet, for all the time people have spent watching and quoting it, so much of what happened behind the scenes has never been fully told. We're talking about accidents that became iconic shots, a real federal prosecutor who cast himself in his own case, mob extras with fabricated social security numbers, and one man who survived the actual mob only to be taken down by his own ego. Drop a comment right now. How many times have you seen Goodfellas? And stick around for number one, because Henry Hill's post-protection life is the kind of story that almost doesn't feel real. Fact 15. Copacabana shot was never supposed to exist. The Copacabana shot is 4 minutes and 14 seconds of pure cinematic swagger. One continuous take, no cuts, through the back entrance, down the hallways, through the kitchen, past waiters hitting precise marks until a perfectly positioned table materializes out of nowhere.
Because Marty is so very accurate about every single timing. You know, what the people do in the kitchen. The guy with the table comes at the right time and brings the table over.
It set the bar for every director who came after it. Here's what makes it even more remarkable. It almost didn't happen. Scorsese's original plan was to use a shortcut through an adjacent hallway for cleaner logistics. The owners of the building next door were locked in a feud with the Copacabana's management, and that hallway was off limits, film crew included, so Scorsese rebuilt the entire shot from scratch, rerouting through the kitchen itself, with camera operators walking backwards through tight spaces while actors delivered live dialogue. 8 takes to thread the needle. Every failure meant resetting the whole sequence from scratch. When take 8 landed, it didn't just solve a problem. It created something that film students are still studying today. 2 feuding landlords accidentally handed Scorsese one of the most analyzed shots in cinema history. The Copa said no to a hallway. The back door became a legend. Fact 14. The funny how scene was pulled from a real moment. You know the scene. Tommy makes a casual comment, the table locks up, and 30 seconds of dinner conversation becomes genuinely terrifying. What most people don't know is that Joe Pesci didn't invent it. He lived it. Years before Goodfellas, Pesci was working as a waiter. He told a customer, who happened to be connected, that he was funny. The man looked at him and turned it around without a smile. How am I funny? The room shifted instantly. Pesci never forgot it. When rehearsals began, he brought the story to Scorsese. Here's the detail that changes everything. Scorsese wrote the exchange into the script, but deliberately didn't tell the rest of the cast how far Pesci was going to push it. The people sitting around that table had no idea what was coming. The sideways glances, the nervous laughter, the palpable tension on every face in the room. All of it was completely genuine. Scorsese kept every second of it. A waiter's uncomfortable shift became the most unsettling dinner scene ever committed to film. Fact 13. That sweet old lady was Scorsese's actual mother. One of Goodfellas' most disorienting transitions, Billy Batts is being beaten half to death and stuffed into a trunk, and then, immediately, we're in a warm kitchen with pasta on the table, and a gentle old woman asking whether Tommy is seeing anyone nice. That woman was Martin Scorsese's actual mother, Catherine Scorsese. Scorsese's direction to her was essentially the same every time she appeared in his films. Show up, be yourself, and feed people. So she did. The painting conversation was improvised. The rambling story about the dogs was improvised. The sincere nagging about Tommy settling down with a nice girl. Completely off the cuff.
Can't you get yourself a nice girl?
I get a nice one almost every night, Ma.
Yeah, but get yourself a girl so you could settle down.
She had no idea there was a half-dead man in the trunk in the driveway while she cheerfully topped off everyone's wine. She played it warm and maternal because for her, there was simply nothing to be bothered about. And if you look carefully, Scorsese's father Charles is in there too, playing Vinny, one of Paulie's crew. Martin Scorsese made one of the most ruthless crime films in American history, and then cast his entire family in it. Fact 12. The movie swore. Far more than anyone planned. The original script for Goodfellas contained approximately 70 uses of the F-word. That sounds like a lot. It isn't, because the finished film landed somewhere around 300. That is not a rounding error. That is a completely different film in the vocabulary department, with roughly 230 additional instances improvised once cameras rolled. Joe Pesci deserves a significant portion of the credit, or the blame, depending on your living room situation. Tommy DeVito treated profanity as punctuation and improvised liberally in virtually every scene. And the rest of the cast was right there with him. De Niro, Liotta, Bracco, everyone leaned into the naturalistic, unscripted energy that Scorsese actively encouraged on set. But here's what makes this interesting rather than just a shock statistic. It worked. The improvised language didn't make the film feel undisciplined. It made it feel inhabited. These weren't actors hitting scripted marks. They were people who had fully absorbed a world where this was simply how conversations went. Goodfellas set the all-time record for profanity in a film upon release. Scorsese has since broken that record twice. Casino, then The Wolf of Wall Street. The man has a system, and he is committed to it. Fact 11. The cash was real and nobody was leaving until it was counted. Prop money has been standard in Hollywood since the silent era. Legal, safe, zero risk. Studios use it without thinking twice. Robert De Niro didn't want it. For the scenes where Jimmy Conway distributes thick stacks of cash with casual ease, De Niro refused fake bills. His reasoning came down to feel, the weight, the texture, the way real currency moves differently in your hand. So, the prop master came up with a solution that was entirely personal. He went to his own bank, withdrew $5,000 of his own money, and handed it over on set. From that point forward, every scene involving the cash became the most tightly controlled moment of the production. After each take, assistants fanned out and collected every bill, counted it twice. Nobody moved, nobody packed up, nobody glanced at an exit until the full $5,000 was confirmed and accounted for. Less movie magic, more a very tense accounting exercise with excellent cinematography. Fact 10. The federal prosecutor in the film. Was the actual federal prosecutor Edward McDonald was the real United States attorney who handled Henry Hill's case and negotiated the Hill family's entry into witness protection. When the production sent a crew member to McDonald's office to photograph it and gather props, McDonald got suspicious his items were never coming back. He asked who had been cast to play him. Nobody had been. He volunteered himself. Scorsese brought McDonald in for one of the most unconventional screen tests in Hollywood history. He had Liotta and Bracco fire impromptu questions at McDonald on the spot. No script, no prep. McDonald answered everything in his own words without missing a beat. Scorsese watched for a few minutes and told him he'd be hearing from them. The negotiation scene is the conversation that actually happened. McDonald wasn't interpreting someone else's version of events. He was replaying his own. His most memorable line, telling Karen to drop the Babe in the Woods routine, was never scripted. It came out during one of 6 takes on the day. Scorsese kept it. Hollywood spends millions chasing authenticity. Scorsese just called the man who was actually there. Fact 9. De Niro called Henry Hill 8 times a day. The production paid Hill a substantial sum to consult and keep the story honest. Hill later said the finished film was about 95% accurate, which is genuinely alarming given what actually made it onto the screen. But De Niro wasn't satisfied with accurate. He wanted granular, so he called Hill constantly, up to 8 times a day at the peak of his research. And he wasn't asking about the big dramatic moments. He wanted the tiny, specific, borderline absurd details. How did Jimmy hold a cigarette? How would he pass out cash? How did he pour ketchup? At one point, De Niro reportedly asked about the exact way Jimmy would tap the bottom of a bottle before pouring. He needed condiment accuracy. That was non-negotiable. Hill answered everything. Every gesture in De Niro's performance carries the weight of someone who actually lived it, because De Niro wouldn't stop calling until he had every detail exactly right. Joe Pesci's Tommy came out nearly perfect too, with one gloriously ironic exception. The real Tommy was over 6 feet tall and built like a tank. Pesci is 5'4" on a generous day. Same terrifying energy, completely different silhouette. Somehow, it didn't matter at all. Fact 8. Real grief fueled one of the film's darkest scenes. The pistol whipping scene plays almost casually, which is exactly what makes it so disturbing. What most people don't know is what was happening behind the camera. During production, Ray Liotta received a phone call on set. His mother was dying of cancer. He finished the scene he was in, rushed to her side, and made it in time. She died in his arms. He didn't speak about it publicly for years. Then he went back and finished the film. When the pistol whipping sequence came up, the first assistant director noted that Liotta had received another update about his mother just before they rolled. Liotta himself said only that he was wound up. Director of photography Michael Ballhaus noted that Liotta consistently pushed beyond what was planned in every physically intense scene. Ilana Douglas, who was on set, later said his real grief was playing out in real time on camera, and Scorsese knew it and kept rolling. The result doesn't feel choreographed. It feels like an actual breakdown captured on film, because in a very real sense, it was. Fact 7. A scene looked so real. It sent someone to the ER. Spider gets shot twice in the film, once for being annoying and once for talking back about it. A stunt double was available for the death scene.
Hey, Spider, on your way over here, bring me a cutting water, huh?
Michael Imperioli said no, he wanted to do the fall himself. The prop department was supposed to hand him breakaway sugar glass, the standard safe variety. They handed him a real drinking glass instead. When Imperioli hit the bar and went down, the glass shattered and sliced open 2 of his fingers. He looked up and saw De Niro looking down at him. A production assistant drove him to the nearest ER in Queens, where the staff saw a man soaked in blood with 3 apparent bullet wounds and went into full trauma response. Imperioli tried to explain he'd been filming a movie with Robert De Niro. He was covered head to toe in stage blood while saying this. Nobody believed him. It took cutting open his shirt and finding the squibs underneath before the panic settled. No gunshot wounds, 2 cut fingers. After all that, the hospital sent him back to the waiting room. He waited for stitches and returned to set. Fact 6. Joe Pesci gave one of the shortest Oscar speeches in history. Goodfellas received 6 Academy Award nominations at the 1991 Oscars. Of the entire cast, 2 were recognized.
And the Oscar goes to Joe Pesci in Goodfellas.
Lorraine Bracco for Best Supporting Actress and Pesci for Best Supporting Actor. Bracco didn't win, Pesci did. He walked to the microphone and said, "It's my privilege. Thank you."
Oh, it's my privilege, thank you.
That was the complete speech. No list of names, no emotional tribute. The whole thing clocked in at roughly 3 seconds. One of the shortest acceptance speeches in Oscar history, delivered by the same man who made the word funny genuinely terrifying for an entire generation. He had no idea he was going to win. He was up against Pacino and Andy Garcia, so he had skipped speech preparation entirely. When his name was called, he apparently decided on the walk up that 5 words would cover it. His was the only win the film took home that night. 3 seconds at the podium, 1 statue, 0 unnecessary syllables. Fact 5. Al Pacino turned down the role and lived to regret. It before De Niro made Jimmy Conway the kind of man who smiles warmly while ruining your life, the role was offered to Al Pacino. Pacino said no. His reasoning: by 1990, he'd already been Michael Corleone and Tony Montana. Another mob role felt like a one-way ticket to permanent typecasting, so he passed on Goodfellas to avoid being labeled that guy forever. While doing this, he was filming Dick Tracy, playing Big Boy Caprice, a loud, cartoonish mob boss in a comic strip hat. He received an Oscar nomination for it, which makes the whole situation considerably worse, not better. Goodfellas dropped, instantly became one of the greatest crime films ever made, and De Niro delivered one of the most quietly chilling performances of his career. Pacino later admitted he regretted passing, and especially regretted missing the chance to work with Scorsese at that exact moment. The man tried to escape the gangster label. He ended up in a cartoon mob movie while the real thing became a classic. Fact 4. Early audiences hated the film and walked out. What is now considered one of the greatest films ever made once cleared a room faster than a fire alarm. Early test screenings were a catastrophe. One in Orange County is the most infamous. Co-writer Nicholas Pileggi described the crowd as white, conservative Californians completely unprepared for what they were about to sit through. When the Billy Bats beating began, roughly 70 people walked out, and the film was barely past its first act. Comment cards from those who stayed were not encouraging. One viewer submitted a card that simply contained a profanity. That card was filed as official studio feedback. His response was surgical. Around 10 violent scenes were trimmed. The Billy Bats stabbing went from 7 on-screen strikes to 4, with the other 3 kept in audio only, which Scorsese argued hit harder anyway. There was one silver lining. The studio had wanted to cut the kitchen scene with his mother entirely. The comment card saved it. It was the one thing audiences consistently said they liked, even the ones who hated everything else. Scorsese later said that is the only reason he is grateful those screenings happened. Fact 3. Some extras were real, mob associates with fake identities. To populate the mob world's background, the production brought in actual connected guys, real associates who knew precisely how to stand, move, and occupy a room full of criminals because that is what they had spent their careers doing. Then, payroll arrived. Standard studio paperwork requires a legal name, address, and social security number. For a significant portion of the extras, handing that information to a Hollywood studio, which would pass it to the IRS, was completely out of the question. So they made up numbers on the spot, rattling off 9 random digits until it sounded plausible enough for the person with the clipboard to move on. According to co-writer Nicholas Pileggi, Warner Brothers' payroll records contained social security numbers that belonged to absolutely no one on Earth. The studio had no real idea who some of these people were or what they did when they weren't standing in the background of a mob movie. Watch those scenes again. The way the extras carry themselves, the weight they bring to a room, there's something there that most background actors simply can't fake, probably because several of them weren't faking anything at all. Fact 2. Ray Liotta talked his way into the role. Without saying a word, Liotta was at the Venice Film Festival with his own film when Scorsese was there for The Last Temptation of Christ, which had generated enough controversy and death threats to require a full security detail at all times. Scorsese had seen Liotta's work and liked it, but had a specific concern. Liotta had played Ray Sinclair in Something Wild, explosive, unpredictable. Scorsese worried that energy might be too aggressive for Henry Hill, a role requiring charm as much as menace. Henry needed to be someone audiences would root for, despite everything he was doing. Then they ended up in the same hotel lobby. Liotta spotted Scorsese across the room and moved toward him. He walked straight into a wall of security. A bodyguard stepped in front of him. Full stop. Liotta's response, "I was like, no, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say hi to Marty." No scene, no wounded speech, just quiet acknowledgement that this wasn't the moment. They made eye contact across the room and went their separate ways. That was the audition. Scorsese later said the stillness in that moment made everything click. The ability to absorb a hard stop without flinching, that was Henry Hill. The question of charm versus aggression resolved itself in a hotel lobby without a single line of dialogue. Fact 1. Henry Hill destroyed his own witness protection because he loved the movie. After everything Henry Hill survived, the crimes, the arrests, the betrayals, the federal deals, he got something almost nobody in that life ever receives. Witness protection. New name, new city, clean slate. All he had to do was disappear. Then Goodfellas came out, and Henry Hill watched a movie about his own life and completely lost himself. He started telling people who he was, neighbors, strangers, anyone in earshot. That movie? That's me. For a man legally obligated to be nobody, Hill was out here personally autographing his own federal protection program. The attention was impossible to resist, so he gave interviews, made appearances, signed memorabilia, caught new charges, and opened a restaurant called Wise Guys because subtlety had never really been his department. He cycled in and out of legal trouble and never really got clean for long. But he stayed visible, always visible. Henry Hill died in June 2012 from heart disease at 69. The mob wanted him dead. The feds gave him a clean slate. His own vices turned out to be a tougher opponent than any of them. He couldn't disappear because he didn't want to. His life had become a movie, and he wanted everyone to know it was his. 15 facts about Goodfellas. A shot born from a landlord feud, a dinner table terror moment pulled from a real restaurant shift, genuine mob associates with invented social security numbers, and a man who survived everything the criminal world threw at him only to blow his own cover because he couldn't stop talking about himself. Which one genuinely surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments. I want to know. And if you've got a friend who still quotes Henry's voiceover from memory, send them this video right now. They'll owe you one. Honestly, even if they've seen the film 100 times. At least one of these facts is going to land differently. Hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because unlike Henry Hill, we are not blowing our cover anytime soon. See you in the next one.